and gentlemen, here it is, the most listened to radio show on the planet. Even the other stations are tuned in too.
Hi, this is Joshua Parrish, the Director of Operations at Six Flags Fiesta, Texas, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge Podcast.
Hi, I'm Grace Peacock, Director of Communications at Canada's Wonderland, and you are listening to the Coaster Challenge Podcast.
Hi, I'm Adam Floyd. I'm the Senior Marketing and Sales Manager at Wild Adventures Theme Park, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge Podcast.
Hey, this is Lauren Cook Crosby from Holiday World, and you're listening to the Coaster Challenge Podcast.
Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Yes, I accept the Coaster Challenge. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Coaster Challenge Podcast is here. It's time to face your fears. Get that theme park therapy and let us both your Coaster Challenge Podcast is here. Your fear can disappear. We know that theme park therapy can dry up all your tears. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? Yes, I accept the Coaster Challenge. Do you accept the Coaster Challenge? We accept because you know we're not average.
You're listening to the Coaster Challenge Podcast. A journey where people become fearful to fearless, all from riding roller coasters. So please, secure your hats and glasses and keep your hands and arms inside the podcast. It's time to accept the Coaster Challenge with your hosts, Andrew Locke.
Hi, everyone. This is Andrew, one of the executive producers of the Coaster Challenge Podcast with you here today. Got a very special VIP guest joining us today. Now, here in the U.S., we of course have many, many parks. Now, most of those parks here in the U.S. would be classified as amusement parks or, FECs and things like that. Chains, for example, like Six Flags and Cedar Fair and others. Now, beyond that, kind of, if you will, above that in terms of theming and, high quality and whatnot, we have our theme parks. And when people think of theme parks here in the U.S., they generally think of Disney, Universal, and then perhaps, SeaWorld, Busch Gardens as well. But there is another chain here in the U.S. that, in my opinion, has some of the best theme parks out there. In fact, I would say, make the claim that their theme parks are better than some of the parks I just mentioned. I'm not going to say who there. I'm going to be nice. But they are some of my favorite parks here in the U.S. and even the world. They rank very highly for me. And those are the two jewels, in my opinion, of the Herschend chain. Those, of course, are Silver Dollar City and Dollywood. And today, I have the great pleasure of talking to one of the executives from that latter park, Dollywood. So I'd like to welcome VP of Marketing, Pete Owens from Dollywood. Welcome to the podcast, Pete.
Well, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're glad to have you. And I understand from talking to your team in advance, setting up this interview, that you are a coaster enthusiast. Is that correct?
I would say that I am a coaster enthusiast. I remember the first coaster that I rode when I was about 7, and I've been on more than 380 coasters around the country and around the world since that time. Quite a number of them that don't exist anymore, but I'm passionate about it. But I'm not somebody that goes out to just get coaster credits. It's more about the park experience and what the entire experience is for families. When I go to a park, I'm particularly passionate about family-owned parks. I mean, obviously, Dollywood is part of Herschend's chain, but it's a partnership between Dolly Parton and Herschend Family Entertainment. And it really is still a family operated business. A little different than, say a Knoebels or a Wonderland Park or places like that are solely owned by one family, but still has that same spirit, that same feel, that same heart. And that's what I'm passionate about is that and what it provides for families.
That's awesome. And I can totally get it, because having been to Dollywood many times, it is one of the best family parks in the world. It is very much, it screams in all the best ways we're here for families. We're not just here for adults. We're not just here for kids. We're here for, everyone combined. And there's really something for everyone there. And again, we'll dive deeper, of course, into Dollywood later. But as far as the question I asked you about being a coaster enthusiast, it definitely sounds like, from what you described there, the fact that pretty sounds like pretty accurately how many coasters you've ridden. 380 you mentioned. That right there says you definitely are enthusiastic about coasters and whatnot. So and then the first half of the interview we'll have some fun talking about you individually in terms of being a coaster enthusiast and a fan of parks and whatnot. And then the second half of the interview we'll talk, of course, about Dollywood, because again, you represent the company and work there pretty high up there, and definitely want to talk about some new things you've got going on there, and some things I've recently experienced there that are really enjoyable and fun. We'll have fun doing that. So, before we get to the Dollywood stuff, we're going to talk about you, Pete, because you are a person that enjoys the parks. So you've already kind of gone over a little bit, but if there's anything else you'd like to share about yourself and about your experience working in the industry, please go ahead and share away.
Well, it's interesting. You go when you talk to a lot of people that work in the industry, and a lot of them say, well, I worked, it was a summer job, or I thought I'd only be there a little bit of time. I was a film major in college, had went into television, then went into broadcast journalism, and I worked in TV news for 15 years before I was taking a break, or I took a break from that and decided, well, I'm going to go work for Dollywood. They had a position open as the public relations manager for the park. And at that time, we just had Dollywood, and then we had some dinner theater attractions that are part of Dolly's portfolio of properties. And, I came in to really represent those. So the first thing I did within the industry was break ground for our water park. So that was all the way back in I guess the groundbreaking was in June of 2000. So this is my 24th season within the industry. And since that time, I've opened everything that Dollywood and Splash Country have put in, Dollywood's Dream World Resort, the groundbreaking and everything else we've done with Heartsong Lodge and Resort that will be opening later on this year. But also on the dinner theater side, I've opened and closed properties, changed brands on properties. We have a brand called Dolly Parton Stampede. We have a brand called Pirates Voyage. Stampedes are in Branson and in Pigeon Forge. Pirates Voyage is in Pigeon Forge in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And we have some other dinner theater brands that are here in Pigeon Forge, but had one in Orlando, have explored other places. So it's been kind of a varied background within the industry. But when I first started, I was challenged by the then vice president of marketing to learn as much as I could about the industry because I was coming in as an outsider. And I got involved with IAPA, and I started to network with some folks that were in the industry, several folks that are still among my closest friends within the industry. Jeff Siebert, who's at the park president at Six Flags Fiesta Texas now, was at Kings Island at the time. A guy named David Matt that is in charge of the IAPA Foundation now, and several other parliamentary things with the IAPA board, was the corporate PR person for Paramount Parks at the time. So that was pre-Cedar Fair merger, and others around the country. Paula Werney at Holiday World, who was retired now. But lots of folks within the industry found it very welcoming, and folks really started to help me along my journey. So I got involved in IAPA, did a lot of different things. I've been on lots of committees, have chaired a great number of committees through the years. Currently still sit on the communications committee for IAPA. And that kind of evolved into like almost 15 years ago now. There was the reformation of the Roller Coaster Museum and Archives Board, and was honored to be asked to join that board, and have been on the Roller Coaster Museum board that whole time. And we're working very diligently to get the actual museum finished and open to the public in Plainview, Texas, but have hundreds of thousands of artifacts and rolling stock and those kind of things that are part of that. And again, that goes back to the history of fun. It's about fun and families, and I just have a passion for the industry.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you for that overview. A few things to unpack there. So starting with the Roller Coaster Museum. So I assume you work with Chris Roberry there in the museum?
I do. Yeah. Chris is a good friend, and Chris does all of our social media for us. He's actually a volunteer, but he and I, interact a lot. His photography of our key assets has been spectacular, and he also runs our store. So he does a lot of our merchandise for us and has created a lot of our merchandise for us. So he's an awesome addition to our volunteers.
Oh yeah, I know Chris personally. He's a friend of mine. I know him from going back to about 2019 or so. I was one of the founding producers. I'm not really involved so much anymore. One of the main reasons is just because I don't have the time for it, especially with how much things have kicked up here with the Coaster Challenge podcast in the more recent years, past few years. But I was one of the founding producers of the ACE Ride With Us podcast. I've been a member for years and ran a long-running segment on that podcast, Coasters Run of the Family, which is all about families that ride coasters together and enjoy the parks together. Really had some great interviews with on that, including interviewing Elizabeth Ringus and her family, the current ACE president. Really wonderful woman herself, and that I work with on the podcast. But Chris is an awesome guy, and again, I consider him a nice, he's a good friend. And I don't get to see him much. Usually I get to see him once a year at IAPA, but always make sure to stop and say hi and catch up. But he's a wonderful person. And one of the things when I describe him to people, of course, you know this yourself already, Pete, is if people haven't heard of him, say, well, you should be thankful that he exists as a human being, because he is responsible almost single-handedly for the incredible ACE documentary about Arrow, which so many people, of course, have seen. So they've seen his work, maybe don't know him personally or know of him personally, but he's a great guy. And you mentioned another incredible pioneer in our industry, someone I also know, someone that myself and Kim, one of our other producers, very recently interviewed here on our podcast, had a wonderful conversation with Jeffrey Siebert. And as I talked about during the interview with Jeff, I had met him for the first time in 2001, way back when, at Paramount's, back in the Paramount days, I should say, at Kings Island when it was owned by Paramount, and had a brief meeting with him. I met him briefly, I should say, as a guest, and just had a great interaction. Just what a wonderful person he is, and what a great person he's been in the industry. And the things he's doing for Six Flags now, for Fiesta Texas, are nothing short of extraordinary. The things he described, because I've not been to that park in about 6 years, the things he described during our interview, it's like, I literally said this during the interview, it's like, I got to get back to Fiesta Texas as soon as possible, and I plan to go next year. But
it's amazing. I've been there. Well, I guess I've been there every year the last 3 years. Nice. And, but, as I say, Jeffrey and I have been friends for, more than 20 years. And it's always great to be able to spend time with him, because he is so passionate about the industry. But he's passionate about the history, but he's passionate about bringing that experience to families that create memories that families want to share. And that is such an amazing, I think that is probably encapsulates why I've stayed in the industry as long as I have, why I continue to be passionate about it, because, I had a president, the original president of the Dollywood company, said to me in my initial interview, he said, you've been in the news business, and, there's a lot of misery in the news, But I'll tell you, no matter how bad my day is, I can just walk out in the midway and I can hear people laughing and walking arm in arm and know that I had a little something to do with that. And, and I said, and what I told him was, I said, well, I think I'd like to do this. I think it's about time that I work in the joy business instead of the misery business for a while. and I have for almost 25 years.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And really what you just described there is very much akin to our mission here on the podcast. We're all about theme park therapy. And yeah, I mean, I spend a lot of time in parks, probably not as much as you do since you work in the industry. And I only cover it, in my spare time, if you will. It's not my day job, if you will. But still, a lot of the time I am in the parks, I'm so often enjoying that time, escaping whatever stresses might be going on in my life and just seeing so much of that and the other people there and enjoying it with friends and family. And I totally relate to what you're saying there. And by the way, Pete, I was trying to figure out, I was not talking to you directly in planning this interview. I was working with Ellen, who works for you there, and she was great, as well as Nathan, who's great as well. I was trying to figure out, once they identified that I'm going to be talking to you, which is, it was great that I was going to, normally we get to talk to like the head PR person, where you started at Dollywood, but being able to talk to someone at your level, we really appreciate that. We don't get often to talk to people at the executive level, park presidents or VPs or whatnot. So we appreciate your time, of course. But I was trying to figure out, I heard your name before. I recognize your name. And now, I realize it may not even be from the Dollywood perspective, perhaps. But I think it's probably because of your involvement with IAPA and just how involved you are in the industry, because I've been in IAPA now for several years in a row. I love covering IAPA for the podcast, networking. It's how many of the interviews that happen in this podcast are started, where the connections are made is via IAPA. I'm not one of those enthusiasts that goes to IAPA just to have fun. I take it seriously and I'm very respectful of the environment. Unlike, unfortunately, a few out there that don't take it so seriously and cause problems. That's not who I am. But anyways, I very much enjoyed the connections I've made at IAPA, and I probably have seen you on the panels or heard your name and whatnot. But my gosh, Pete, the fact that you've worked at Dollywood now for almost 25 years, being in the industry for that long and just at one place, you obviously do something good. So very impressive.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and Dolly's a pretty good boss, so that helps as well.
Oh, I bet. She's such a wonderful, positive person. I can only imagine, for sure. So let's go ahead and move on to what we call our fear journey. So you've ridden, as you mentioned, probably about 380 or so coasters. So why don't you tell me and think back and this is kind of what we also call our theme park time machine segment in the first half of the interview. What one coaster in your life has scared you or intimidated you, giving you the most anxiety? And how did conquering the fear by riding that coaster change or impact your life?
Well, it's interesting because I think that part of the fun of theme parks is the fear.
Sure.
And I think that the opportunity is, and I will say this, that, the short answer to the question is, well, what's the one that was the most intimidating? Well, King Ka was the most intimidating.
Okay. Got it. Makes sense.
And so, but it's the fastest and the tallest coaster. If really you want to call that a coaster. I mean, it's a one trick pony, right? But it is, but it's certainly intimidating. But I can tell you, even being on, if you look within the ACE community, I mean, there are folks that have been on thousands of coasters, 4,000 coasters. Yep. And, I'm sure that their approach is every time they get ready to get on, hopefully they still feel the butterflies that you have on a ride that you've never been on before. And I think that simple action of being able to do that, and be able to conquer that feeling of uncertainty, is, maybe a minor victory of I mean, I'll tell you, the last summer, I went to CoasterCon last summer because we were getting ready to host for this year.
Sure. Yeah.
CoasterCon last year was at Cedar Point. I had not been to Cedar Point in probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. And I will tell you that getting ready to get on Millennium Force, I still had the same kind of anticipation and butterflies that I did the first time I wrote it because it had been so long. And of course it paid off, in an awesome way. But, the things that I am typically, that I typically, I won't say anxiety. I was going to say anxiety. I don't think anxiety is right. I think those things that I take a pause for, I get butterflies for, are the ones that, generally have the highest drops. Sure. So even though my favorite steel coaster right now is Fury 325, still that first drop is one that, I've had butterflies for. And I think conquering each time that you do that, even if they're minor victories, is an opportunity for you to kind of, you're weaving a, kind of a tapestry of success that you've had. And that helps, right? It's it's coaster or theme parks, or even just straight up amusement parks like a Cedar Point become places of victory.
Yep.
And it's and I think that's a fun opportunity, and certainly a part of that. I think that, as you transition and you have kids, and I have a daughter that is 21 that has Down syndrome, and she's a coaster fanatic, but getting her on things, she still has the same level of anxiety, and you can see it when she's getting ready to ride. And then when it's over, seeing the smile and seeing the feeling and having the conversation with her that, I did it. Let's do it again.
Right.
And, and that kind of feeling, I think that has, for me, there's a little bit of transference there, right? That you have that as an opportunity to be able to live it again through her, in a more real way that, after you've been on a couple hundred coasters, there's a lot of similarities, as I'm sure that you will agree. Sure. And so it's, but it's fun to be able to do that with your kid, or with another person that, has some level of anxiety. I mean, it's funny. I just rode Big Bear Mountain with somebody that is on my team, and she's not a coaster rider.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And she was terrified.
Right.
And I was like, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And we'll talk, and we'll get into this a little bit later as to what Big Bear Mountain's all about. But the sense of speed on that ride caught her a great deal by surprise.
Right. Right. Yep. Yep.
And, now I have probably bruises on my knee from her grabbing my knee through the whole ride. But again, a level of transference that was exciting for me, that provided an opportunity to experience it through the eyes of somebody that's not a seasoned rider,
right.
And so, those are kind of fun things. I mean, typically anything that gives me, some level of pause, I mean, I guess I can give these as examples because they don't exist anymore, but the Rattler before they went to Iron Rattler,
right.
at Fiesta, Texas, that was a scary ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a scary ride because of the amount of motion in the structure, right. and in all of that. And that was more of I wonder if I'm going to make it back. And then by the same token, the attractions that are on the Stratosphere.
Oh yeah.
Are a great example of something that is, that would provide a level of anxiety. And I will tell you, that X ride that they have that they tilt down and you just roll down to the end.
Yep.
That is one that I would say next to King Cod, that's probably the next attraction that I would have had the greatest amount of anxiety for, because, you know, you're way up there. And I won't say that I have necessarily a overtly fear or an overt fear of heights. I mean, I've been bungee jumping. I'm a pilot. You know, there are other things, but certainly that I'm taken aback by those things.
Right. No, absolutely. No, it's very good things to unpack there, Pete. Thank you. So, you know, first of all, you mentioned the Strat. I'm a big fan of Vegas. I've got a friend of mine, a coaster enthusiast, very close friend of mine. He's going to Vegas. I think it's going to be his first time, at least in a long time, in September. And he's talking about being able to do the attractions there. And he mentioned the coasters. I said, don't miss out. There's no coasters, but don't miss out on the basically the flat rides effectively at the top of the Stratosphere, because they're absolutely fantastic. And if you're really brave, maybe try out the sky jump. But yeah, certainly, especially you know, X there, I think more so than the space shot or I think it's Spin Sanity or whatever the other one is, the spinning ride that goes out.
Yeah.
Swings over. But then that one's great too. But the X is the most intense of them, not in the speed of movement or the forces, but just in terms of challenging your mind in terms of fear. Because, you know,
100%. That's the thing, right? It's the deal. The Spin Sanity thing is, once you figure out, well, yeah, I'm in a lap restraint and I'm probably not going anywhere. They kick you out over the side and it starts to spin. I mean, you know, as you age, or at least as I've aged, I'm not a big spinning fan anymore. Right. But the experience of being able to look straight down at that height that you are. But, you know, it's that idea with X, as it tilts down, you're like, I certainly hope this stops. Because if it doesn't stop, it's going to be a bad day. And I think that's it. But you feel the feeling of exhilaration once you have accomplished that.
Oh yeah,
I think is amazing. And I think that also goes into, tangentially, I would say that if you think about what coaster designers try to do, and I'm quite good friends with Jeff Pike, that is one of the principals in Skyline Attractions, but also does a lot of design work for GCI. And Alan Schilke has been a friend for a long time. He actually was the engineer that designed Tennessee Tornado, but when he worked for Arrow, but he also is Lightning Rod's designer. And so the idea, he kind of bookended his career at Dollywood. Good point. It's those things that, what are those things that they are trying to find that will surprise people and will give folks that smile, that gasp, the giggle, all of those things, that's kind of I think that's a fun, tangentially, I think that's the fun thing, because it is that feeling of exhilaration that you're able to accomplish it. And then on their side is, how are they creating those moments of exhilaration for you to be able to experience them?
Absolutely. The other thing I wanted to tie in is at the kind of beginning of the answer to your question there, which you also kind of addressed there a moment ago, is you talk about these minor victories and facing fears and whatnot. And you talked about how, hope these acers that have, 1,000, 2,000, many thousands of different coaster credits, you hope they still get the butterflies. So what I have learned from my own experience being a coaster enthusiast, I've ridden almost 600 coasters at this point. And from interviewing other coaster enthusiasts here on this podcast and just talking to friends of mine, I've got multiple friends. Let's see here, a couple of whom have been on the podcast that have well over 1,000 credits. And by the way, these guys are all like in their 20s. So, they're these, where they're, God only knows how many by their 70s or 80s, whenever they stop riding, how many credits they're going to have, but they're going to be super enthusiasts and whatnot. But what I've noticed, again, from my own experience and talking to others, is that, once you've ridden so many coasters, you keep facing your fears again and again and again. It is very much like a muscle, like going to the gym, but it's all about the mind. It's all psychological, where your mind is able to face fear much better, where you don't get the negative aspects of that anxiety and that of those butterflies. So the butterflies can be both good and bad, and it's not just about rides. And I see this in myself, Pete, so much. I have been, as a human being, because we're all human, life has its ups and downs, not necessarily in the literal sense, like we're talking about coasters or rides, but in the figurative sense, in terms of positive and negative challenges in life. And I've had, because I'm a human being, several of them the past few years, and I've been able to face them far more effectively, dealing with one right now than I was able to, say, in the years prior. And I strongly believe that's because of how much riding I'm doing, and because I've really been diving into the parks because of a major life change from about 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago at this point. So I'm a strong believer that the theme park therapy, the immersion, but also especially combined with the positive aspects of facing fear, the accomplishment that you talked about, Pete, combined with the endorphins, the adrenaline, these so to speak chemical releases that people do drugs for, they do recreational drugs for very dangerously to get those same feelings. We as coaster enthusiasts get them naturally, well, so to speak, naturally, but without doing drugs, but with the impetus, the source being something much more positive and basically almost no danger at all by riding rides instead of doing drugs. You should feel very fortunate. But again, all of that adds up to us, being able to face fears in other areas of our lives and not even have fear, where so many people have so much fear. So I think, it's something I've not really thought about up until maybe the past couple of years and getting involved with this podcast, especially. And it's fascinating to me. And again, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. There have been some studies in this area, and eventually we haven't had one yet, but I would like to get some professionals on the podcast and talk about them and dive deep into that. But the other thing you mentioned, kind of tangential of this, is you mentioned about hope that these guys that still ride have ridden thousands of coasters still get the butterflies. I mentioned that positive side of the butterflies. And I can say for this, I don't get afraid riding any coaster. But when I get on a new coaster, a Big Bear Mountain or Pipeline recently, it's not about the fear anymore. It's about the excitement of, oh, what's this going to be like? And, I wonder, where it's going to rank on my list and what's going to be cool about it. What's going to be unique about it? What's going to surprise me? It's all those positive excitement. It's why I go to movies, that have just come out because I love movies, or why I travel to places I haven't been to before. Or, I travel again and again to the same places because of how much I love them. It's that positive stuff that we can still get without that fear facing. So just because you're not facing fears anymore doesn't mean it's not good for you or it's not going to get a positive experience. So,
no, I agree with you. Absolutely.
So, thank you for going through the fear journey with me here. Now, taking a step back, going up to the 10,000 foot level, beyond fear, and obviously you work in the industry, that's a given. But, besides working in the industry, can you think of any other significant positive impacts that being a coaster enthusiast and being an enthusiast of parks, any other positive impacts those have had on you in your life?
Well, I think it's it's for me, working in the industry, it's that sense of community. It's not only the community of people that work within the industry. It's funny that, one of my really good friends is Gary Slade, who is the publisher of Amusement Today.
Oh, right.
And Gary is friends with everybody because he was an enthusiast, and then he worked for, and he did publications as part of ACE, and then he did his own publication, and then that evolved into Amusement Today, which has really taken over after Amusement Business went out of business as kind of the, Bible of the industry, but he knows everybody. And so I've been, a fly on the wall or had the opportunity to meet or whatever with all of these different people. I mentioned World Wonderland earlier in Amarillo. Paul and Paula Werney owned that park. What an amazing, what amazing people, the Knoebel family, amazing people. There are the Aries that own the fun spots around the country. Just amazing people that are all in it because they love making people happy. And they can't get out of it. I mean, Paul and Paula are probably in their 80s or late 70s, early 80s, and they don't, they'd like to retire, but then every time they open the park for the year, then they can't retire because, and it's, look, and Dick Knoebel's a great example of that. He's the same way, I'm sure he'd like to retire, but it's he and Buddy and Leanna. I mean, they're in it every day, and it's in their blood. And I think certainly that's something within the industry that has been amazing for me to experience. And starting, as we talked about, starting as just a PR guy for a park. And at the time when I started, a pretty small park, frankly, in Tennessee. And, now, not such a small park. I mean, we now are becoming a destination resort.
Oh, definitely.
I would say, from an attendance perspective, at or exceeding what a park like Hershey Park does in a year. And I don't have New York and Philly sitting right, in my back door. So it's just, it's been very gratifying to be part of that and be able to, further Dolly's legacy, be able to create these experiences. So, all of that has been a great part of the experience. But, it is, I love the history of it also. Sure. I love the transition from trolley parks to local amusement parks to, into the beginning of the theme park era, into what we've become globally with all of these parks. I mean, look at the Mock family and the fact that, they started doing, circus wagons, that their company started building circus wagons in the, 16th, 17th century. And now they're, own probably the best park in the world with Europa Park and still create some of the best rides, are innovators in creating some of the best rides in the world. That's just cool, right? I mean, that is just something that is just cool.
Yeah, no, very well said. And to touch on a couple of things you mentioned first, the most recent thing you said, what the Mock family has done is nothing short of incredible. And I know many listeners of this show and friends of mine have not yet had the fortune or the experience to be able to go to, say, Europe and go to Germany. And I have been very fortunate. I've gotten to travel a lot in my life, mainly for business, where I'm traveling to Asia or the Middle East or Europe. And I go visit parks locally, where I've already flown over there and I've got spare time, I've got the weekend or whatever it may be. But I also certainly have traveled on my own dime to go to certain parks. For example, I had not really been to Germany for work before. And last year, I actually wound up going twice because the first time they blew me away. Even all my friends were saying, Andrew, you're going to love Europa. But still, until you experience it yourself, you don't know. But because of how much I loved Europa Park and Phantasialand in October last year, I went back to both of them and other parks in December. But yeah, Europa Park, what Mock has done with Europa, people just, because people are in the U.S., they think of, okay, well, Time Traveler, that's the best Mock in the country. That's pretty amazing. But, it's not, it's not this or it's not that. Well, what they don't understand is that, what Mock has done in Europe, with Ride to Happiness and even Blue Fire. Blue Fire, I think, is one of the most underrated coasters in the world.
Arthur and the Incredibles.
I'm sorry, say again?
Arthur and the Incredibles.
Oh yeah, Arthur is so. I want to see that ride system be implemented in more places. I know it's been implemented in the Middle East now, but I'd love to see it come to the U.S. It's so actually, no pressure, no, and don't say anything if it's true or not. But Arthur, that ride system would be a great fit for Dollywood. Absolutely.
100%. No, it would be. It'd be great. It would be great.
Yeah, but the coasters there, but the theming, the food, the how expansive that park is, the quality of the experience, the shows. Oh my gosh, Europa Park, in my opinion, has the best shows on this planet in a theme park. Their ice show, Surprise, that ice troupe is nothing short of extraordinary. The shows that they put on. I just saw a circus style show. Speaking of, you said these mock got started with the circus in the 1700s. They had a circus show going on because they rotate their shows pretty frequently during the holidays, and no animal. Well, they actually had birds in it, but again, very animal friendly. No animal abuse. Don't worry, people, if you think this is not the circus of old. Very, very modern circus, but oh my gosh, the things they did in this circus! Just such great shows. And then you've got the food loop, the amazing, roller coaster restaurant, so to speak, which is great food, and the experience is wild. There's so much at that park and at that resort. Etron, the ride, dining experience, which I need to do. I've not done yet, but and the water park's supposed to be amazing. Rulantica. I mean, Mock is an empire. They're a media empire too. They have tons of movies, TV shows that kind of feed into the parks, like Disney does. The Mock family. And I can't wait to see what they do next, because the coasters they're building now, both there, like Voltron, as well as elsewhere, they are stepping it up, and they have some of the most comfortable restraints, along with Intamin in the industry as well. But yeah, as you mentioned that, so thanks for mentioning that. But
you bet.
And the other thing I want to touch upon is this question always, and I'm not saying this in a bad way at all, it typically gets the same answer with every guest we've had on, which is it's the social side. That's what people, the biggest impact. But it's interesting talking to you, because we've had, a number of, what we call our VIP guests, whether it be, Jake Hilcup from RMC, or, other ride manufacturers. We've had Adam Sandy on from Zamperla, Steve Boney from Mauer, and many others. And also we've had a number of people representing the parks. We had Jeffrey Siebert on recently, for example, as I mentioned. And, it's interesting getting kind of that professional side is, you enjoy the professional relationships, these other people that work in the industry, and how much enjoyment and how much they love bringing joy to people. Well, I'm on the other side of it. Again, I don't work in the industry. I talk to people like yourself pretty frequently, but I mainly, my social circles are fellow enthusiasts and friends, and I'm blessed with many of them. And I love that social side and how much joy there is that we share together. I mean, this is, you and I are on the kind of different sides of the same industry. And again, it's all about the joy and how much fun we have and how good it is for you, mental health and everything. I guess it's kind of on the opposite side from, like, I don't know, garbage collectors, or, it's we're all about, we're in the business of having fun and covering having fun. And it's all very positive. So I definitely can understand why you would mention the social side of it. That makes complete and total sense. So now you've ridden a lot of coasters, and I'm guessing you've ridden many of them more than once.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say has been your craziest or wackiest moment on a coaster?
That's a hard question. I mean, it is, there are some crazy rides out there.
Well, to help you answer the question, generally with this question, we're talking about, being evacuated off a ride, something weird happening on a ride, a guest acting odd, some kind of interaction, someone, just things falling, we've had some people talk about someone not doing the right thing. We all, as coaster enthusiasts, hate this. Someone having their phone out, losing their phone, and then someone else catching it, things like that. Can you think of any stories like that?
Well, I mean, I think the more you ride coasters, the greater the chance is that, you get, there's an e-stop, or, you got to be evacuated. And so, I look at that as kind of a normal part of the industry.
Right.
But I will say that, yeah, I mean, I've been on a coaster where there have been people getting married on the coaster.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, yeah.
That certainly was, I don't know about crazy, but was interesting in a good way.
Yeah. Was that at Dollywood or somewhere else?
It was somewhere else. It was at Knoebels, but I mean, it was,
That's cool.
but I mean, but still, a great, again, Phil just, fits in with the community. And I would agree with you. I have a lot of friends that are enthusiasts as well. I mean, Richard Munch and I are very, very good friends, and he's one of the three founders of ACE.
Yeah.
And so doesn't ride as much as he used to, but he still does. And folks like Derek Shaw, people that I'm friends with are all older people. So
Right.
because I'm not a youngster anymore. But I still have lots of friends that are young too. But I would say the quick wedding is one.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, we'll stick with that one because I can't think of anything else off the top of my head.
No, that's great. That's great. You mentioned about that you're not a spring chicken, and then that's fine. And a lot of your friends are around your age, maybe even older. I wanted to comment. One of the things that I love about this hobby, and another positive thing, is when you have a hobby and it's a social one, because not all hobbies are social. You tend to have this unifying aspect where it could be age. Age is not an issue. And I find that to be especially the case with coasters, because this is such a consuming hobby. I mean, when I say consuming, I mean, this, when we're hanging out at the parks, when we're in line may not the case, but if you're not in line, you're very occupied, with what you're sharing with each other. It's not some boring thing, or doesn't have a lot of boring moments. And oftentimes when you're in line, you're just chatting about parks or other experiences, what you got coming up, what travels you got coming up, what you're excited for. There's a lot to talk about with this hobby, so you can occupy those other times. So I think because of those, it's very age defiant, and I certainly am an example of that. I've got many friends that are fellow park and coaster enthusiasts that are in their late teens, 20s, and I'm in my 40s. And then on the other hand, I've got a whole bunch of friends that are in their 50s, 60s, even getting into their 70s, but especially 60s. And it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter, because we have so much that unites us, and that's fantastic. So in any case,
yeah, it is fun to see the transition of folks that are like Derek Shaw or like Cliff Herring or people like that are been in the club for 30 years, 40 years,
right.
That they've transitioned to that they ride, but they don't ride over and over anymore. Right. That it's more about getting together with friends and it's the social structure of that whole thing than it is. But I think I think you're right, super fun. And it's one of the things I look forward to. I mean, I'm really looking forward to hosting con this weekend, and it's the largest con in history. There's over 1,300 Acers that will be at con. So that's about 400 more than have ever been to a con in the past. So we're excited about that, and excited to see old friends, right? I mean, excited to see folks that I haven't seen for a while. And I think that's what a lot of that is about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I appreciate, that you really appreciate the social side, like you said, and, like these guys that are maybe a little more up there in age where they physically can't ride as often or marathon, where they'll ride here and there, but they'll just appreciate the social side. I mean, I can relate to that. I was at the, infamous Hollywood Nights of 2021, where, there's a combination of issues that happened, very tragic, and especially one case, which is the Dawn, the woman that died on Voyage, that resulted in Voyage being closed the first night, understandably, mind you, and then Thunderbird being closed that year, and all these other things. There were some timing issues, but granted, it was my first Hollywood Night, so maybe that helped, but really more so than that, it was the social aspect. Like, yeah, I would have liked to ride Voyage the first night, but I wasn't doing those mean tweets, like unfortunately some people very inappropriately were doing to the park, and now they're banned from going to that event. Well, if you fool around, you find out. But no, I wasn't like that. I was just I try to really be positive as much as possible in my life. I don't always succeed, but I was enjoying the social, just seeing people, seeing friends I haven't seen in a long time. I was hanging out with friends there that I had not seen in 2 years. The last time I saw them was in China, in Shanghai Disney. I mean, it's stuff like that. So I can appreciate, it's not just about the riding or doing active, watching a show or, even grabbing a meal at a park. It could just be there, standing there, sitting somewhere talking. So, and just enjoying the commonalities, the common hobbies and interests we have. So,
yep.
So you already mentioned your favorite coaster is Fury. And which was
my favorite steel coaster is Fury.
Okay. Well, all right, let's do this then. Let's do this. We already talked about Fury a little bit. What is your favorite wooden coaster?
The Phoenix at Knoebels.
Okay. So I'll let you decide, which of those would you like to expand upon and talk about why it's your favorite?
Well, let's talk about the Phoenix.
Okay.
Because it is, so I'm sure most of your listeners probably know. So traditional wood coaster, buzz bar. Yep. So unlike the modern coasters, it doesn't have a lap restraint. It actually, the original PTC trains had a buzz bar. So that's a bar that is basically in front of you and up on top, but it's not necessarily restrained. So it doesn't restrict airtime. So right. As you're riding, it allows you to really kind of float on the seat a little bit. What I think I like most about the ride is its re-rideability. And it is a fun ride, very traditional, a lot of airtime, but it's the kind of ride that I can ride over and over and over. And generally, on my coaster list, the rides that rank the highest are those that have a high re-rideability factor.
Sure.
So, like as an example, you mentioned the Voyage. I like the Voyage. I'm a one or two ride Voyage guy.
Right. I get it. Yeah.
And some of that is like, if you go through some of the rides that prior to being redone, Ghost Rider, Texas Giant, Rattler, things like that, prior to being reworked, they definitely were one rides because of the way the ride experience was. The Phoenix has always been very well maintained by the Knoebels and by the maintenance team there, Jim Martini and the guys that are part of the maintenance team there. But it's a great story, right? Dick went to Oklahoma, got the ride, bought it, took it down, moved it to Ellisburg, Pennsylvania. That's why it's named the Phoenix, is because he saved it from the ashes. Yeah. And it's a great story for our industry, and it's just a great ride. So that's why it's my number one. There are a lot of other good wood coasters out there, but I would say Thunderhead at Dollywood is probably within my top three. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And I get it. Phoenix is very re-rideable. It's very smooth, and it's not like the Voyage. It doesn't have that crazy intensity where even, especially if it's not had track work recently, it can beat you up. It can be rough on you and all that. Although Voyage is my number one wood, it can come with a cost. Although I will tell you, Pete, you may want to get over to Holiday World, because the track work that and again, that's a labor of love there, that Holiday World did, the Cook family did this past off season. Apparently they worked on the first half of the ride for the first time in quite a long time, because that combined with the work they did on the back half last year, holy cow, Pete, it is running better than ever. It's still relentless and crazy and fast. It seems like it's faster than it should be running, and it's almost like it's going to come off the track. It's that fast. But it's so smooth now. Like my legs, Hollywood nights, I got a lot of rides on it both nights. They weren't hurting the next days. Not like,
well, that's good.
Yeah, last year, my legs were killing me. They were killing me. So no, they've done amazing work on that ride to the best of both worlds. It's still an amazing, fast-paced ride with all the great elements and airtime and everything. and laterals, but with none of the pain you have to pay for it, so to speak.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah,
I'll have to get up there.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned Thunderhead, and actually this is a good transition into the second half of the interview, talking about, of course, Dollywood, where you work as VP of marketing. So I have been to Dollywood now, I think it's 4 or 5 times, which is saying something because I've never lived in Tennessee. The closest I've lived to Tennessee is now where I live in Orlando, the theme park capital, and it's a good 10-hour drive for me. I've never flown to Dollywood. I'm a big road tripper. I like flying. I've flown a lot of places. I mentioned Europe earlier, Middle East, Asia. I've been as well, all over the U.S. But I like driving to Dollywood. Why do I like driving to Dollywood? Well, because one of my other hobbies is I'm a car enthusiast. And for me, coming from Orlando, what do I have between Orlando and Dollywood? Well, if I choose to go that route, either I usually do it on the way there or way back, I can take the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is one of the best driving roads in our great nation. And I just love the sights and the great twisties. And oh my gosh, that road is amazing. But not only that, I love driving, into Gatlinburg and into Pigeon Forge. And the Smoky Mountains are one of my favorite parts of this country. And then there you have some great attractions, many of them owned by Dolly, including, of course, Dolly was owned by Herschend, but Dolly is very much still involved with the park, and Dollywood is just an absolute jewel of the Smokies of Pigeon Forge. And like I said, I've been there several times, despite how far away it is, including already twice this year. And I'm thinking probably not my last time this year. Here we are in June recording this. And I appreciate a most recent visit was just a couple weeks ago. Thank you for hosting me, Pete, and your team. Appreciate it. So that I could get on Big Bear Mountain, because it was not quite open yet when I was there for the Coaster Crew event about a month and a half before. And so, yes, I did get to ride it a couple weeks ago, and I appreciate that. But also this year, I've had a great experience. Again, as you mentioned, in your top 3 wooden coasters is Thunderhead. Now, I've ridden Thunderhead before. I love GCI coasters. They make some great products, great rides. But I was not prepared. You hear about often, when you go to quality parks like a Dollywood, like a Holiday World, you hear about, oh yeah, they retract this year. They retract this year. Well, yeah, I mean, wooden coasters should be retracked frequently. Absolutely. So you don't necessarily think, oh yeah, it's going to be better. Okay. I was not ready. Nor were my many friends that were there as part of the Coaster Crew event. Unfortunately, Lightning Rod, as it sometimes was down that day. So you were, not you personally necessarily, maybe it was you personally, whoever was responsible there was very kind enough to switch our ERT at night, our evening ERT, over to Thunderhead. And I got to tell you, by the time we were done that night, all of us were like, Lightning Rod who, first of all? And number 2, we're very appreciative that we got the ERT on that coaster instead, because oh my gosh, the transformation that Thunderhead went from last year, because I did ride it last year, to this year, it's like night and day. I mean, it is, and I mean this as a compliment. Claire, Haynes, from GCI, I mean this with the utmost compliments. GCI coasters are amazing, but, say compared to Voyage is another level of intensity. But so when I say this, I mean this with the utmost compliments. Thunderhead is riding like a mini Voyage now. It's like a mini intense gravity group ride, in that the ejector moments on it are insane. They're absolutely insane. They've gotten so much better, the pacing of the ride and so forth. So I was blown away. So we here on the podcast, I mentioned we talked to manufacturers. We recently talked to the very charming Olivia Hain, Claire's daughter, one of his kids that works there, GCI. And one of the things we talked about was the great work that GCI did on Thunderhead, because I had just actually ridden it at that Coaster Crew event right before I interviewed Olivia. But can you talk about what was done, or was it a special commitment on Dollywood's part? Was it not just like, oh, let's do some maintenance, we got to do maintenance all the time on Thunderhead, let's do our yearly maintenance? Was it really like a couple steps above that, what you decided to do there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, so you're exactly right. If you're going to have a wood coaster, you need to take care of it. Yep. And there are a lot of parks that don't necessarily take care of their wood coasters until it gets to a point where they really can't do anything except either go call, GCI or call RMC and either Titan track it or do the, RMC a ride, because it's the only way that they can save the ride.
Right.
We have always maintained Thunderhead well, but we made a commitment a couple of years ago with Claire to replace all the track bed all the way around the ride with Ipe, which is a very, very dense South American wood.
Yes.
It's often called ironwood. That is so dense, as a matter of fact, it doesn't float; it sinks. And so we have been working with them over the last couple of years to do a section at a time. They did the largest section this year in the off season, so the entire circuit has now been redone with Ipe. I would agree with you. The pacing on the ride is really, really good. I've always really liked it. As a ride, I rode it. So that ride was designed by Mike Boodley. It's probably, in my opinion, I think it's his best design. We had worked with GCI previously at Silver Dollar City. There was a park for a short period of time that Herschend had opened in Branson called Celebration City.
Yep.
And they had a ride there called the Ozark Wildcat. That was a GCI ride. Really, really good ride. Very short, kind of a mini Thunderhead. And we had them design to use the terrain that we had, and which I think they've done, that Mike did brilliantly. But it really is, it's just a really, really great ride. It is very re-rideable. I mean, I've ridden it as long as I've ridden it a couple of hours in a row. I rode it with Mike before we opened it originally for several hours, riding in the back of the ride, just talking to him. And it's just a great ride. I like the twisting first drop. I like the big wave turn right after the first drop. But the last third of the ride's my favorite part.
Oh yeah.
And it's pacing really, really well now, and is very, for a traditional wood coaster, is quite a smooth ride. I mean, it's not the same as it's not the same as a RMC or a GCI Titan track. It's not a steel track like that, but right. If you remember, you have steel wheels on steel track bed. It runs pretty darn smooth, and right. We're very, very pleased with it. And quite honestly, you mentioned Lightning Rod. Lightning Rod's been an incredible challenge. We decided that we were going to do something no one had ever done before. We fairly quickly figured out why no one had ever done it before. When you put a launch that's an LSM launch that has a tolerance of about 1/16 of an inch,
right.
On a wood coaster, that can move as much as, if it were to be really, really hot and been dry, and then it rains in an afternoon, it could move an inch. And so, getting all of that right has been a challenge. But we'll be talking a little bit later on in the summer that we're going to make a change to some things with Lightning Rod to ensure that more folks are going to have the opportunity to ride it, because it's down probably a third of the time that it should be open. And that needs to be about 90% of the time, or 95% of the time, rather than what it is now. So we're working on it. But, as we say, it's a labor of love, right? So it's a thing that you got to continue to work on. And these guys that we have that work in our maintenance division, they love these rides. And they're their rides, and they want to make sure they operate as well as they possibly can. So if you go to a park and a ride is down, I can tell you that you may be disappointed, but probably no less disappointed than the guys are that work on it every day.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. And thank you for commenting on Lightning Rod. It's a great ride. Thunderhead is, especially with the track work that was done, it is my favorite coaster at Dollywood. But Lightning Rod's a great coaster. And I understand you guys have had issues with it. It's the only of its kind in the world. It was obviously then the first with the launch, LSM Wood, which as you mentioned, challenges. I'm an engineer. I get it. I have been saying for a while now, maybe, and again, I don't expect you to respond to this or comment. But I've been saying, especially with a little bit of trim that happens at the top of it, guys, just turn into a chain lift, maybe a fast chain lift or something. And that's what I'm hoping you guys are doing. Again, I'm not expecting you to answer. We'll find out in a couple months here, it sounds like, but it would be great if it had more uptime for sure. Just a kind of final comment on Thunderhead before we move on. Before riding Thunderhead this year, it was definitely one of my favorite GCIs, but Wodan, which is the tallest GCI, it's at Europa Park. Again, another great coaster. It's one of the few that are not mock there at Europa Park. It was my favorite, with Mystic Timbers not far behind. And after riding Thunderhead this year, again, like I said, in April, the Coaster Crew event, it became my number one GCI. It's not even close. But even more striking, Pete, you'll be happy to hear, many of my friends that were there with me that, literally in my local group that we were, walking around riding everything together that day were Kings Island enthusiasts, locals there, in the Columbus, Cincinnati area. And Mystic Timbers, especially since they ride it all the time, it was their number one GCI. They had been on Thunderhead before. All these people had been to Dollywood before. But after riding Thunderhead that day, especially in the evening, the night rides, warming up and everything, all of them were like, Mystic Timbers who? Again, it was all about Thunderhead. Thunderhead is now their number one GCI. So
that's great to hear. That really is.
Yeah, you guys did amazing work there with Claire and the team there at GCI. So thank you for doing that. So now, speaking of work that you guys have done, I know, gosh, is it going back to 2018, 2019 or so? Dollywood with Hershen made a major announcement of a multi-year, many $1 million investment into Dollywood. And again, you mentioned it. I see it myself. It's already paying off in terms of, Dollywood's really growing and turning into this destination park. Some of that money, a lot of those millions are going into Heart Song, which I hope to be checking out. I'm on your media list, and thank you for inviting me. And I don't make it to every event, but I'm hoping, I will get an invite and, to the Heart Song. And if I'm in town, if I'm available and not overseas or something, I will be there. Because Dreammore, I've been to Dreammore, and Dreammore's incredible. And by the way, Heart and Song, the buffet that you guys have there, everyone loves Granny's. We go to Granny's every time we're at Dollywood. I'm like, guys, you gotta go to Song and Heart. As good as Granny's is, Song and Heart, it beats Paula Deen's. It's better than Paula Deen's. And anyway, so I can only imagine what kind of restaurants you're gonna have at Heart Song and how beautiful the resort is. I look forward to checking that out hopefully later this year. But again, all this investment you guys are making, and Butterfly Grove, of course, is another big area of investment. And Dragonflyer being the first of these modern gen, not hang and bang, comfortable, re-rideable, Vekoma family suspended coasters. Because I had not ridden Freedom Flyer, even though Freedom Flyer is only a couple miles away from me. I'd not been to Fun Spot yet after moving to Orlando, but I went to Dollywood and rode Dragonflyer, and oh my gosh, what a fun coaster that is! And now you've got a total 1-2 family coaster punch with Big Bear Mountain, and I certainly have some thoughts on it. Before we get to my thoughts, why don't you talk? Representing, of course, Dollywood there. Talk about Big Bear Mountain and what this new attraction offers Dollywood guests.
Yeah, so we'll take two steps back there to let me hitchhike off a couple of things that you said. So we did originally in 2013, we made an original announcement that we were going to spend about $300 million on Dollywood over the next 10 years. By the time we got to 2019, so that's 6 years in, we built Wildwood Grove, which is currently the number one children's area at any park by golden tickets.
Nice.
And it includes Dragonflyer as the anchor thrill attraction for families. but has a lot of other really great little rides that are in the area, because it's really focused on a story about the Smokies from when Dolly was a little girl and how she would wander off. And this is about a hidden hollow that she found. And all of these great things are in there. So there's a metal bomb bear ride where you can ride a bear. There's Frogs and Fireflies, which is a Zamperla frog hopper. There's a flying scooter. There is a pirate ship. There's some other things that are there. And then it's anchored by this large tree that's in the center that does shows in the evening, kind of akin to the Tree of Life for Animal Kingdom, right. But they're Smoky Mountain stories. So when we were going about that in 2019 and we were building that, we built out a huge story around Wildwood Grove. And a part of the story we didn't tell was the story of the park ranger for the area, Ranger Ned, that and a story that was there, which is kind of rooted a little bit in local lore, is about a big, huge bear that wanders the Smokies that people say that they've seen, but they may not have seen him. And it's been going, so it's kind of a tall tale. So we thought, what a great idea for an attraction, you know, whether it's a dark ride or whether it's a coaster or whether it's something else. It's a great story. Sure. So we're in the storytelling business. So, you know, what could we do? So COVID happens and we come back. We open after COVID and we make an announcement that Dolly and the Hershins have decided, well, we're going to double down. So we made an announcement in June of 2020 after we reopened that we were had run out of money and we were going to spend $500 million over the next 10 years. Wow. And the two pieces that we would be adding would be Heartsong Lodge and Resort. And we would be building a large coaster as part of Wildwood Grove. That really the key was for us as we went through the RFP process, and everybody submitted, and they all submitted really great ride attractions. I mean, Intamin and Mach both presented really, really cool ride options for us. But part of the RFP process was we want to reinvent the family thrill coaster.
Yep.
So the idea is we want a coaster in which families who have kids that are 39 inches, so that's about a tall 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, so they can ride. But they can ride with the whole family, and it'll be thrilling enough so older brothers and sisters will want to ride it.
Right.
And so Vekoma just hit it out of the park. They got exactly what we wanted to do. They knew we wanted to tell a story, so we added onboard audio so that Ned could be talking to you through the ride. And we added some pretty cool things. So this a couple of weeks ago in May, end of the second week of May, we opened Big Bear Mountain. It is a Vekoma family thrill coaster, and it's a triple launch. Top speed's only 47 miles an hour, but I can tell you that the LSM launches that are on the ride definitely get your attention. Oh, yeah. And the ride's really broken up into two parts. There is an out portion that is very close to the ground, rapid change of directions. You go behind a waterfall, you come back around. Once you go behind the waterfall, you realize that Big Bear is chasing you. And so as you come through, you get to the third launch and you kind of put the afterburners on. You go over a big airtime hump. And then the second half of the ride is very much wide sweeping helix kind of turns, change of direction, and then down through a tunnel and then out. Longest ride for us, it's almost It's 4,000 linear feet. So that's about little over 2/3 of a mile. It runs 1 minute 42 seconds, which is a long time for a coaster. A lot of people kind of get to the airtime hump and they think, oh, it's over. Well, no, there's another third of the ride left. So you have that to go. But it's been very, very well received by our guests. And I think it's a home run for exactly what we wanted to do in recreating that family thrill ride experience. Had folks in the industry come and ride it that have seen it, and they're convinced that Vekoma is going to sell a dozen more of these around the country and the world after they get a chance to ride it here at Dollywood.
Oh, I believe that, absolutely. So, again, like I mentioned earlier, Coaster Challenge, and I'm the generally the closest rep, although Kim, our other producer, she's fairly close by as well, but she doesn't have the time freedom that I do. She's a teacher, school teacher, so it depends on the time of year. But if it's outside the summer, she's not available. I tend to be more available, say, to go to media events. And I've been invited to the media event by Nate for a Big Bear Mountain. Thank you for the invite. And I knew this problem could happen because of the timing of when Dolly herself had announced when the ride was going to open. So I emailed Nate in advance. Again, I'm an engineer, as I mentioned, Pete. I like to get ahead of things. It's part of how I do problem solving. And I had some family commitments. My dad was moving from San Diego here to Orlando, and I couldn't leave. I couldn't leave Florida until the middle of May, like May 15th or 16th, I think it was, because of the commitments with him, helping him out. So, unfortunately, the media event, I just missed it by a few days, literally. But again, thank you again for accommodating me with a few weeks later at the end of this road trip that I happened to be on after I got my dad settled. I did a 3-week road trip up to the Midwest, had a great time. And the cap of that trip, the end of that trip was going to Dollywood before heading home. And talk about that in a moment. But because I missed the media event, some very, very close friends of mine, I'm assuming you probably know these names and their company, Christian and Morgan Duffy, Escape Visuals. They do a lot of work.
100%. Yeah, I love the Duffys.
Yeah, they're amazing people. They're some of my closest friends. In fact, I spent the last couple nights with them having a great time at Disney, and we did a couple of escape rooms and some great dinners. They're amazing people, and they do amazing work with their company. And Christian, because obviously Christian Morgan, but they're filming. He told me how great the ride is. They're both coaster enthusiasts like myself and you. And I was like, okay, I can't wait to ride it. And so I was, between Christian saying what he said, because Christian is not afraid. He's like me. He is not afraid to be honest about his opinion. He's an East Coast Italian guy. I'm a New Jersey guy, So anyways, so I had high expectations. And so there I was, first weekend in June. They're riding it, a beautiful day, and I was blown away. Now, I will tell you, Pete, my bar for family coasters is Hagrid's. I think Hagrid's, and honestly still is, nothing against Big Bear. We'll talk about that more in a moment, but I think Hagrid's is the best family coaster in the world. The theming and it's just, however, Big Bear, it's like a mini Hagrid's. And yeah, we're talking Universal versus Dollywood. We're talking about different markets, and here we are in Orlando in the destination market. That's an ultimate destination. You guys there with Dollywood, it's not quite the same level. It's different budgets, etc. But just still, Dollywood does amazing work. And that mini Hagrid you have there with Big Bear, which has theming, it has the audio, it has the waterfall, and has the sound of the bear. And then it's chasing you, like you said there, when you get out of the water, when you come into the waterfall through the cave. It's the onboard audio itself is great, and just those launches, like you said, I was blown away by it. They pack a punch. Like Hagrid's, they do pack a punch. It's a family coaster, but it's a family coaster with, well, to use a little bit of a pun, with teeth, bear teeth. But the other aspect of it, the pacing, as I said, is great with those launches, 3 launches. But the other thing about it that I was really surprised by is the elements on the ride. You have some good airtime, but those kind of wave turn elements, never seen a Vekoma with that. And I've been on some crazy Vekomas overseas, at Energylandia, for example, Abyssus, which is a great ride. But for being a family coaster, it's great because, like you said, 4 to 5 year olds can ride it. But there's not just for big kids, as you mentioned, Pete, but there's something for adults there too. It is. I would have, if I had more time, I'd have gladly reridden that ride. So yeah, you guys definitely have a winner, and a great 1-2 punch with Dragonflyer as well combined in. So congrats on the successful launch of yet another awesome attraction there at Dollywood.
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, we're really proud of it, and I mean, I think it does. You know, as we go through and we look at what's next, we very much are looking at storytelling opportunities, certainly, but also those things the park doesn't currently have. And because we're growing attendance so rapidly, it's very important for us to be able to ensure that when you come, that we have you have the opportunity to have a significant experience, so that, you have 7 or 8 entertainment units during a day for you to visit. So you see a show, or you ride multiple rides, or you have character interactions, or those kind of things. And we're very focused on doing those things as we move forward. I mean, next year we'll have a new Dolly Parton experience that is expanding into a new land, but there'll be a new kind of it's called Songteller. It'll be more of a museum, but kind of a Van Gogh-like experience that's more immersive. There'll be a separate exhibit on wardrobe and a separate exhibit on faith and family and kind of roots kind of things. That's in the lobby of where her family show is. And that'll open in 2024. And then our next big expansion will be in 2026 that we're pretty excited about. So, we're planning ahead, and it's all about providing as much as we can for families.
No, that's fantastic. And Dollywood offers so much, great coasters, including accessible ones for families, young children, budding coaster enthusiasts, perhaps, if you will. Great flat rides, the S&S Scream and Swing there. That's a great ride. Your Drop Tower, a great ride. You have fantastic shows, fantastic food, some of the best food in theme parks. I would say probably the best food in theme parks in the U.S. Even considering Disney, I would say are at Dollywood and Silver Dollar City. And I'm not just talking about the cinnamon bread, which that is incredible, absolutely incredible.
I would agree with you there. Yeah, absolutely.
But just even the quick service, Granny's, Song and Hearth, like I mentioned. I mean, just great Southern comfort food, and there's no bad food at Dollywood or Silver Dollar City. That's another aspect. If anything, and again, if obviously you're not going to say yay or nay, and I'm not asking you to, so don't confirm, but just sharing my advice. The one thing I can think of as let me take a step back, Pete, real quick. I'm not just a coaster enthusiast. You may have gotten a sense of that from me saying that I love Fantasyland, Europa Park, and some other things, but I'm a theme park enthusiast equally to being a coaster enthusiast. So I love the shows. You've heard me talk about that. I love the dark rides and things like that. I think the one area where Dollywood has some opportunity, maybe there's a good way to put it, is dark rides, whether it be flying theaters or traditional, ride through dark rides, your Omni-Movers, something like Symbolica. Symbolica is incredible. I don't know if you had a chance to ride that at Efteling. I could see you guys doing really well talking about the Smokies and the, flying theater of the Smokies. And I know there's one at the island. I love the island, but you guys could do one too, I'm sure. And if you do work with Dynamic Attractions, they make the best flying theaters in the world, especially their second gen ones, like the one they have at the island or at the pier in Seattle. Wings Over Washington is one of the best rides I've ever been on. Wild, amazing flying theater. But anyway, so hopefully you guys will maybe delve in, because I think great opportunity, especially for family entertainment for families. I'm excited, whatever it may be, dark ride or otherwise, for 2026. Another thing you guys do really well there, might have already mentioned it, is special events. And I've been able to go to a couple of them. But can you talk about, for, the special events you guys have got going on, say, for the rest of this year? Anyone kind of talk about highlights or things people can look forward to?
Sure. I mean, we're just getting ready. This Friday, we'll open Great American Summer, which is our summer-long festival. It's highlighted by a lot of interactive stuff that's outside for families with kids, a lot of water kind of things that are out. But we have a great show that we brought back for several years in a row. That's a Gazillion Bubbles. It's a show actually that's off Broadway in New York for the balance of the year. And they are, and so they bring a Gazillion Bubbles in for the summer from mid-June through mid-August, which is a great family show. And then at night we do Sweet Summer Nights, which is we do kind of a dance party that sets us up to be able to do a drone and fireworks show. We do a huge drone show. There are over 500 drones.
Oh, wow.
And it is, and it's the next gen of drones. So they're able to do dimensional figures. And so it's not just flat, a flat image that you see. And really a lot of fun for families. And that runs, as I said, through the middle of August. We then start a fall event in September that runs through September and October. That is a harvest celebration that we've done for a long time. But then at night, we do an event called Great Pumpkin Luminites that we originated here in 2017. Several of the other Hershey parks have done a pumpkin or a Great Pumpkin Luminites event. That this is where it started. And we literally have tens of thousands of carved pumpkins, carved lit pumpkins and funkins. So not only real pumpkins, but the fake pumpkins, that are in large sculptures of pumpkins, of things, and then down to a lot of detail things that you'll walk through areas that, maybe a camping scene next to a stream and everything's done out of pumpkins. And just a really, really great nighttime event from that perspective. But probably the headlining festival that we do every year is Smoky Mountain Christmas. It's been the number one Christmas festival in the country for almost 20 years. We've been doing it since 1990. The golden tickets only started about 20 years ago. And we've won it every year. 7 holiday shows, 6 million lights. We'll do a nightly Christmas drone show starting this year. It's really an amazing immersive experience. So, and it really is layered in everything that we've been talking about. Great food, great entertainment. I mean, these are Broadway style Christmas shows. Christmas in the Smokies is the headlining show for that festival. Was written for the festival. We do 'Twas the Night Before Christmas, a Living Nativity, several other smaller shows, Candlelight Carolers, things like that. But just a great experience. And that will run from the first weekend of November all the way through to January 6th. And just a lot of fun. And then we'll open again next year. We open on March 1st next year, and we'll open with a Dolly festival. That's the I Will Always Love You festival. And it'll feature a large production show. And we'll also feature a couple of other shows that are rooted in Dolly's music. But it'll be a great way for us to kick off the year and to get us ready to open the Dolly Parton experience a little later in the summer.
Nice. That's fantastic. I have that my first visit to Dollywood was for the Harvest Festival and the Great Pumpkin Lumilights Festival. And I love haunts, by the way. I love like Halloween Horror Nights, Not Scary. I usually travel to go to different haunts. I love going out to California for Knott's and other haunts. Do a lot of haunts here in Florida and so forth. But even though I love haunts and everything, I loved the Luma lights. I mean, I know it's family friendly. Of course, it's Dollywood. No haunted houses, no scare zone. But still, it's gorgeous. It's so beautiful and so, just how it transforms at night. I love being there at night. Now, forget about night rides. Yeah, I had a great night rides on Thunderhead and all that. But just walking around, enjoying the lit pumpkins and the sculptures. I love theming, and you guys do a great job with it. And you mentioned the Christmas Smoky Mountain Christmas. I've never been out there in that time of year. I think we've been on your media list now for about a year. It's fairly recently. I was able to get it on your list, and unfortunately, I was not able to go to the Christmas event last year. I'm pretty sure we got an invite. I'm hoping you guys are kind enough to send us an invite again this year, because I would just love to go to that event. Just already what I'd heard it was already. But on top of that, with what you just mentioned, I mentioned earlier, I'm an engineer. I love technology. It's one of my other hobbies. And I've had the fortune to see a couple drone shows in person. I've seen the awesome festival, the 50th festival, if you will, celebration that Kings Island did last year, and they're fantastic nightly spectacular they did. I saw it a couple times last July 4th weekend. I was there with some friends. And then I most recently, a few weeks ago here, actually literally a couple days before I went to Dollywood last, we got a very special treat that so many, again, I talked about earlier how I'm a coaster enthusiast and a theme park enthusiast. I have a lot of friends. They're really just coaster enthusiasts, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I really saw it at Hollywood Nights, because we were told in advance that the opening day, the first day of the event, that at I think it was 8:30 p.m., 8:15 p.m., that we are going to be treated to Holidays in the Sky, the drone and fireworks show, the new one. We were going to be the first to see it, and so few people watched it. Everyone was just riding Voyage, and hey, nothing wrong with that. But again, I love it all. I love the theme park stuff too. And oh my gosh, what an amazing drone show that was! And that only has in quotes, air quotes here, 400 drones, and you guys have 500.
Yeah.
So I'm thrilled to hear that you guys are going to be doing the drones. Because I may not make it during the summer, but for the Christmas event, for the Smoky Mountain Christmas, you're going to do a drone show. Oh my gosh, sign me up! I can't wait to see that. So
it's great. What's interesting for us is kind of necessity is the mother of invention, if you will. And around here, since 2016, when we had the wildfires here, we've seen in the fall from October, November kind of on in the wintertime, it's gotten really, really dry here. And so it lasts. We've done fireworks at night for Christmas for a number of years. And last year, I think we were only able to do fireworks like a handful of nights.
Right.
Because the rest of the time, the fire marshal said, it's too dry for you guys to fire off fireworks. And so this was an opportunity for us to be able to do something a little different, but to create something that we think will be memorable.
Well, I have to say, again, I've had the fortune to see a lot of nighttime spectaculars here in the U.S., all around the world. Phantasialand, Shanghai Disney, and other parks, whether it be fireworks, whether it be drones, at least here in the U.S., or your projection mapping, your World of Color style shows with not just the projection mapping on water screens, but the fountains and the lights and all that. Those are kind of your main kind of fireworks, drones, projection mapping, fountains. Those are kind of your main, and pyro. Probably the other one too, are the main kind of things you see in these kind of nighttime shows. And honestly, fireworks is the big one. I think drones are better than fireworks, besides being more environmentally friendly and again, safer with fire danger and whatnot. I think drones are much more flexible and they're just incredible to watch and see what they can do. So yeah, again, that Smoky Mountain Christmas, I can't wait to see what you guys do with that. So yeah, that sounds great. So thanks for going over the events. Before we kind of wrap up here with a few last questions about you, Pete, and a little bit about Dollywood at the very end, I'd like to ask you just a follow-up question from something you mentioned in the beginning. We'd already moved on, and I thought of something, so I figured I'd insert it here. You mentioned, again, I love themed entertainment. I've been to dinner shows. I love dinner shows. You mentioned that that Herschend and Dolly have a dinner show here in Orlando. Is
We
that right?
did.
Oh, you
So
did.
we had it was there for 10 years. So if you know where the um the outlet mall is, it's right off Vineland
Yeah,
there.
yeah, of course. Yeah.
So the where Mary Queen of the Universe, the shrine is that's there in that area.
Right.
On the corner of Vineland, as it wrapped around, we had a Dolly Parton Stampede there for about 10 years. Did extraordinarily well in the during the holidays, and it did okay during the summertime, but didn't perform the same way that our others do. And we closed it. I opened it there, and then I closed it 10 years later. But that business is one in which, we've looked at other markets, and particularly now with the Pirates Voyage model. That's an incredible show. Very similar. The dinner theaters kind of all have that kind of formula of the competition and all of that, and very similar. But I mean, we have the one that's in Myrtle Beach is it's a huge lagoon with 3 full-sized pirate ships, one that's sunk and 2 on the other side, 2 on the end to end. And then the one here in Pigeon Forge has 2 pirate ships that sit kind of adjacent to one another. It's the back half of the ships that's on a lagoon that's created, but really, really great experience. We also here have a dinner theater that's called Hatfield McCoy Dinner Feud.
Yes.
And we have a regular comedy show called Comedy Barn. And all of those are part of the they're all part of the Dolly portfolio.
Right. And also part of that, you do have a Dolly Parton Stampede still in Pigeon Forge.
We do, and we have one in Branson, Missouri also.
Branson, right. Yeah, I've not, as much as I love dinner shows, I've seen a couple here in Orlando. I've seen multiple times out, I think it was in California, and I've been to others, but I've not been to any yet in Pigeon Forge area, or Branson for that matter. But I've heard great things from friends about, for example, the Dolly Parton Stampede. So I probably, maybe even my next visit to Pigeon Forge, I would definitely want to check that out. Because
they do a great Christmas show as well. So that may be good if you were able to come then.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. That'd be an awesome little add-on there. Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, again, let's go wrapping things up here. So our next question we started asking here in season 3 because of a tragedy that happened basically end of last year, which was a very close friend of Coaster Challenge, especially of David's, one of our earliest and first fans of Coaster Challenge back when we were still just a YouTube channel. His name is Dusty. He tragically, at the age of I think 16, passed away way too early in life, and so that brought to David especially mortality, the thoughts of mortality, and about how once you're passed away, how your friends, your family, your colleagues would remember you by. So that leads to this question. So Pete, when you're gone, hopefully not anytime soon, of course, how would you like your family, your friends, your colleagues to remember you by?
It's a tough question. I mean, I think that I'd like to be remembered that I was a good and trusted friend. And that, from my family standpoint, that I put my family first when I could. And it's, I hope it's a long time from now as well, but I've always tried to live to give back and to treat others the way that I want to be treated. And hopefully that's the way I'll be remembered.
Sure. No, that's very noble. Very noble. That makes a lot of sense. So thank you for sharing. So speaking of giving back, good segue here as well. As we kind of alluded to and talked about in the first half of the interview here today, we are all about theme park therapy, about the idea that theme parks are not just good for you and fun for you, I should say, but they're actually good for your mental health. They're good even for physical health, exercise, amongst other things. So in the spirit of trying to help people have better lives in the realm of theme parks and themed entertainment and whatnot, can you think of any advice, any pearls of wisdom that you'd like to share before finishing up here?
I think that probably the biggest piece of advice, really does hitchhike well off of what you just asked. I mean, don't take any day for granted. I mean, I saw something the other day that resonated with me, that, because dogs' lives are much shorter than ours.
Yeah. Yeah.
They, if you notice, every day they're very excited. They're excited to see you. You might go outside for a minute and then they see you and they're really excited. And it is, or you go to work and you come back and they're thrilled that you're there. And, a lot of that has to do with that seizing the day, because their lives are so much shorter than ours.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It's that 7 years to 1 year thing.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things that you look at and you say, well, maybe if we were a little more like they are.
Yes. Yes.
That it would be, it might be, things might be better. So I would say that would be number one. And, the one thing that I sometimes forget, but is always a great one, is that as you, two things. I tell my daughter this, my oldest daughter this: life's a contact sport. And you need to make sure that you, get out, make contacts, make friends, make physical friends.
Yeah.
Texting and being friends, on Facebook or on Instagram or whatever is great, but people need human interaction.
Yes.
And so making sure you understand that life's a contact sport. And then secondly, God gave us 2 eyes, 1 mouth, and 2 ears. Watch and listen to others before you speak.
Huh. Yeah. Wow. That's, I see what you're emphasizing there, that we have 2 of the things we should be using first and foremost, and only 1 mouth. Wow. So, wow, Pete. So, one of the things, we have been doing these interviews now for going on 3 years. So we are well past 100 interviews. And the advice here, you've just given 3 great pearls of wisdom, not just one. So thank you for giving the 3 for 1. Great bargain we got here today from you. Those 3 we've never had before, and so unique. And especially that last one, I just love the poignancy of it. I'm going to have to remember that one for sure. Great advice, again, to think, to observe, like you said, listen, see what's going on before saying something. Because I've certainly, like any human being, I have spoken too soon or too quickly. Absolutely, great advice, but a great way to put that. Very unique way to put that. I've never heard. In terms of the second one you mentioned, the social. Absolutely, in this day and age, so many people, whether it because of technology, with cell phones and iPads and everything, with texting and Facebook and social media, you're not getting out in the real world. Thankfully, I am someone that follows your first piece of advice. So because of that, the second one is not a non-starter for me. It's not an issue for me. I'm on social media. I'm texting my friends. Of course, that's what we do in the world. But I am getting out there. I'm meeting with people and having great, memorable experiences. Absolutely. But for kids, especially like you said, for your daughter, it's important to remind kids that are growing up in this crazy world that we live in. Say, you got to get out there. You can't just stay at home, on your phone, playing video games, watching TV. You got to get out there and be social. Absolutely. But last but not least, I want to touch upon the first thing you said, which I think was the most poignant. First of all, I love animals. And by the way, I love the Eagle show you guys have at Dollywood. Oh my gosh, so good. I love that show, the Bird of Prey show. But my favorite animal pet wise, because I've had a number of pets for years, is dogs. I have 2 dogs, and I love my dogs. My dogs are my kids. I don't actually have any human kids, and I'm fine with that personally. I love my dogs. I try to take them wherever I can. They go on a lot of road trips with me. And in fact, our listeners, you've heard them before on the podcast, just like you've heard Kim's dogs sometimes barking and making noise in the background. But you are so right, Pete. You are so right. I've thought about this myself before. Dogs, they live in the moment, which is so powerful to do. And it's really what we need to do as humans as much as possible. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about tomorrow. Focus on the now. Enjoy the now. And when you come home, I have no creature on this planet is happier than when you come home and your dog sees you. No creature's happier ever. And my, I love, some of my friends, my dogs can be a little noisy. They're Alaskan Klee-Kai. They're basically Siberian Huskies, but smaller. They have all the features. So they're very talkative. But I don't, it doesn't bother me because I know a lot of it is just their zeal, their passion, their love of life and their appreciation of me and of just people coming over. They love meeting new people and everything. And yeah, I mean, and it really, what your advice there, what's encapsulated, you've probably seen this meme, and a lot of our audience probably has seen this meme. It's a very powerful meme. It's a dog and assumably his, I don't like to use the word owner, his dad, if you will, his, the guy sitting next to him, a human. And they both got thought bubbles above their heads. The human has, it looks like a guy carrying a briefcase, job, money, he's thinking about all these problems in his life, stress in his life. And the dog's bubble is that picture right there in the bubble of the human next to the dog. The dog is thinking about the here and now, being with his human, with one of his favorite people. And that, again, in the moment, the dog is not worried about things. It's just thinking about how much it appreciates being a companion. And, dogs are the most amazing companions, man's best friend. So yeah, if we could be more like dogs, living in the moment, living in the now, because we, life is short. We all have a limited time. Dogs have a lot less, unfortunately, but we all have limited time. So fantastic advice. Thank you so much, Pete. That's great.
Yeah, you betcha. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So last thing here before we sign off, as we always do, is now, Pete, this can be for you personally. If you'd like to share, certainly understand if you're not as, put yourself out there socially, with everyone. But I know certainly some PR reps do and whatnot. So perhaps you do this, but certainly please share for Dollywood, at least website, podcasts, YouTube channels, social media, just where people can, again, if you'd like, find you, but certainly find Dollywood and learn more.
Sure. I mean, Dollywood.com is where you can get everything, and you're going to be greeted with information about the resorts and information about the parks. So that's the easiest way to go, or follow at Dollywood on Facebook or Instagram. Believe me, I'm out there. There are quite a number of enthusiasts that follow me on Twitter at PRPedo, but I will say in advance, I'm a rather passionate sports fan, and there are times that I maybe say things that are not 100% politically correct when I'm watching some sports. But because I am I went to the University of Kansas. I'm a very passionate college basketball fan, but and so that's one of those things, but that's me.
I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing, Pete. And I want to touch upon something you mentioned there about, you're not always politically correct with the things you say on Twitter with, talking about sports. And I totally understand that. I'm not a sports person myself, but of course I have many friends that are, and I get it. I totally get it. They're rabid fans. You can get excited and into it. But forgetting about sports for a moment, I want to point out this. I try to share advice whether it be a guest or myself, or, just something comes to mind. Whenever something comes to mind, or a guest mentions something that makes me think of something here on the podcast, I like to share with the listeners. And that is, in this day and age, with social media, with texting, there's so much about the written word, about what people say, that we focus on what people say. And sometimes people can get caught up if people use a foul language or something politically incorrect. You know what, people, my advice is don't get hung up on that. It's just words. People, all of us have emotional moments. We have our, not so great moments. What is so much more important than what my people say, especially on social media, is what people do in life and how they conduct themselves. Focus on that, not on what people say, because we all have our moments where we may say something in the heat of a moment. So anyway,
great advice. Great advice.
Thank you, Pete. Again, I love it. This podcast is about helping people live better lives. So that's what the advice is all about. But again, thank you for sharing all that great advice a few moments ago. And thank you, Pete, for joining me today. I know we had planned for an abbreviated interview, which is why we didn't ask some of the questions we usually ask. And you had kindly mentioned you've got some time. So I did add a couple more things on there. And I really appreciate everything. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you for sharing about your amazing park. Looking forward to spending my next visit there hopefully soon.
It's been entirely my pleasure. Thank you, guys.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you want to see more of us, we upload every Friday. Be sure to like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, all at Coaster Challenge. Links are in the description below. Thanks for joining us here today.